Ladies and gentlemen, the Open is 16 weeks away, at least as of when we're recording this. Welcome back to the Mayhem Performance Podcast. This week, we're going to talk all things Open and quarterfinals, how you should be thinking about your prep leading in with, only a few months left. And if you're a quarterfinals athlete, how you should be preparing versus if you're trying to get into quarterfinals and your focus is on the Open. I have Dom and Inga with me today, and we're going to jump into this. So Dom, I think my first question for you would be, at this stage in the season, what should the athlete have already done and where should their focus be leading into kind of the end of 2025?
Yeah, so we should be coming up to the close of like your off-season training. So if you've identified your limiters, you should really start this phase of the season here before we get to February when the Open is like your bridge phase, where we're going to start to incorporate like stuff into our training. We're actually training our limiters not in isolation. And then also starting to probably like play the game a little bit, whether that's once or twice a week, where we're actually like feeling Open style workouts or quarterfinal style workouts, depending on our level. We can start to work our way back into those things versus just really spending a good amount of time on our major limiters that we identified from last season. For most of us, that's probably strength. So most of us are probably coming off a major strength block, and actually bringing back some fitness. So the first few weeks of prepping for season usually hurt a little bit more for most people. But that's kind of the fun part, is like getting back into introducing our sport.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, Inga, I know that there are people out there that just heard Dom say that and they're like, I haven't worked on any of my limiters. Like, I've just been doing CrossFit. So like, what would you do with that athlete? Someone comes on with you and maybe they do have like these major limitations still. They come to you and they're like, I have no ring muscle ups and I really want them before the Open, or I can't handstand walk, and there may be handstand walking. I don't want to make a fool of myself. So, should they be working on that right now, or how do you think about that as a coach?
Yeah, I would definitely have them work on it for sure, and just bring in the skills mixed in with the other CrossFit work as well. So working on their limiters, but also keeping the strength work and all of that combined. And yeah, it depends on what type of limiters they have and what type of athletes they are coming to you as well. And you guys can maybe chime in a bit with that. Like, yeah, it definitely is not too late to work on it, but you shouldn't have that the main focus maybe, but still like have it in there quite a bit.
Yeah, I would say, you're listening to this podcast when it comes out maybe like 14 weeks away from the Open. So it's getting even closer. There's not much of a runway left. So if there are these things that you really need to work on, make sure that you're spending time on them, because they can be such big separators in the Open, and then even more so in quarterfinals based on what your goals are. And I think that kind of leads me maybe just to put a thought in everyone that's listening to this, their head of where are you as an athlete and what is the actual goal? Because that's going to be dependent, or that's going to change what the training should look like for you. And what I mean by that is, if you know that you're an Open athlete and that's where you're peaking for your season, then what you should be focusing on are those Open style movements. You're not going to see GHDs or rope climbs or maybe any of those high skilled gymnastics movements most likely in the Open, but you will see double unders, you will see toes to bar, you will see chest to bar, you will see thrusters, all those kind of commonly tested movements. And you need to make sure that your training is revolving around those. Whereas if you are an athlete that you're going to make the top 25% and your goal is quarterfinals, then you need to start thinking about, okay, how do I incorporate some of the other skills that are tested more often in quarterfinals, which are the GHDs and the rope climbs and maybe the longer workouts. Now you can introduce those 30-minute workouts as opposed to the Open, which usually is only around 20 minutes or less. And by the way, again, half of the workouts testing the Open, over half are between 8 and 14 minutes. So that time domain matters a lot for Open athletes. But then if you're a quarterfinal athlete, you got to kind of broaden your horizons.
Sure. I think also if you are a quarterfinal athlete, you don't even need to worry about the Open.
Yeah.
Really. You just need to complete it. And part of that might be like having a workout that's just like burpees and dumbbell snatches, not feel absolutely amazing, because you might be someone who in quarterfinals knows that there's a massive gymnastics muscular endurance piece coming up, and you'd rather be prepared for that than like get a top 500 like place finish on a dumbbell burpee workout. You could take like an 800th in that in the Open, and then maybe get like a top 200 on the quarterfinal workout with the muscle ups and the handstand push-ups paired together, because that's way harder than a burpee dumbbell snatch workout. And like the burpee dumbbell snatch workout is something you can get better at probably for your next season. Like if you're not a semifinal athlete and you're trying to peak at quarterfinals, pay attention to what comes up in quarterfinals, the higher skills, some of the longer workouts, and then also like heavier barbells. Yeah. Don't sacrifice that to get a better open placing, because for you, technically the open doesn't really matter in terms of placing. All that matters is you make the top 25%.
Man, preach, Dom, preach. Like, I think that that's the most important thing for me when I'm having conversations with my athletes, or, you know, doing consults with athletes that maybe just have questions about the season. Think about what you're actually training for. And I think everyone gets so focused in on, I still need to crush the open. And yeah, it's great. It's always like a confidence boost when you go in and you feel great on everything. But to Dom's point, it doesn't matter if you finish 500th or 1,000th in a row burpee workout, if the things that do matter for your goals, quarterfinals, come out and you haven't practiced those. Yeah. Like, so you need to make sure that you're practicing those skills. And one thing I tell people to do is go and look historically at what's been tested in quarterfinals. Look at all those movements. And then really the easiest way to do this, which ones scare you? It's like, oh, those deficit handstand push-ups that they tested back in 2021, those scare me, right? Or the heavy clean and jerks that were 275 for men, like that scares me. That's really heavy. Well, that means you need to be working on those things. Yeah. And then going back, if you are an open athlete, which ones scare you, right? Is it the rowing and burpee? Because then you do have to build kind of that endurance base and be really good at that. If your goal is like, can I squeak into the top 25%?
I would also say it's really important for like if your main focus is the open, don't compare yourself to someone else like at your gym that's maybe focusing on the quarterfinals. Yeah. Like you can't compare yourself and be like, well, he's doing it 3 times or 4 times, but here I am only doing it once. Like it's, you know, you have to watch out not to go there.
Yeah. And it's really easy to get sucked into like, oh, they're way better than me, or maybe they're not as good, but like you're focused on 2 different goals. So like stay in your lane and make sure that you continue to work on the things that you need to work on.
And I think on the other end of that, just like you guys are saying, if you are just trying to make quarterfinals for the first time, if you were like 27% in the open last year and you want to be top 25%, don't work on rope climbs. Like literally don't work on them. Like actually like hammer burpees and thrusters and toes to bar and double unders and calorie rowing, like things, wall balls, things that we typically always see in the open. And yeah, probably a couple of the higher skills, but we haven't seen a ring muscle up or a rope climb or anything like that in the open in years, especially with just 3 workouts. And with quarterfinals, we know they're probably going to come up there. So if you're someone just trying to make quarterfinals for the first time, actually probably do less of the high skills really leading into the open. That final phase of open prep, like try to feel as aerobically fit as possible and do the classic CrossFit stuff in that 8 to 14 minute range so you can actually make quarterfinals. Yeah. Then once you've finally made that step, then for the next season, then you can train for quarterfinals.
Totally. Now, the way that the season's set up this year is you have your 3-week open, there's a 1-week gap, and then that next week is when they test quarterfinals. And the reason I bring that up is because I think for the athlete, you need to start thinking about, based on where you expect to finish, how you actually peak out through the season. So let's go back and let's kind of give these 2 different avatars. There's the one athlete that is, let's say to Dom's point, 27%. So they're like right on the bubble and they know like, hey, if I really peak for the open, I may have a chance to make it. They're going to train a little bit differently going in with all the movements that Dom just said, but they also are peaking at a different time than the athlete that needs to make sure that they're 100% ready for quarterfinals, because that's really 5 weeks after the first week of the open. So they have a longer runway. So I'll kind of throw it back to you guys. How do you write differently for those athletes? The athlete that needs to make sure that they're really focused on the open versus the athlete that's really focused on quarterfinals. And for the quarterfinal athlete, maybe talk about like, what are you doing during the open to make sure that they're fresh and ready for quarterfinals?
You want to go first?
Yeah, it's all about like the tapering before. I would say you're not doing like a taper if you're going for the quarterfinals, and you're not tapering before the open. Right? Yep. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think something I would think about for open athletes as well is like, I actually used to do this when the open used to really matter when I first started coaching, is after each open workout, I would make a list of the movements that were just used, and then a list of the movements that typically come up in the open that haven't been used yet. And in like the week training leading to what's coming up is I would like reuse movements that haven't, or that have been used, so that I don't like make someone sore if like 150 toes to bar come up on Friday. So their Wednesday training session would have like stuff that was in the open workout from the week before, but Monday and Tuesday, I might actually like train for the things that are still coming. Yeah. Right. And I would actually prioritize that. Now with quarterfinals, I think I would do something like slightly different for an athlete that's on the bubble. I'd still want to almost like do a little bit of quarterfinals prep. So if they were to repeat an open workout on a Monday, if they're doing a second session, if they're an athlete that does 2 sessions, I would probably have them do like a little bit of quarterfinals training on that Monday, or some strength training. Then Tuesday would be like prepping for movements to come in the open. And then Wednesday would be like stuff that won't affect what's left, and probably using movements from the week before or the 2 weeks before, since we're only a 3-week open. And that for the open athlete, those 3 weeks I would be tapering 100% for, right? So the week before would be like one massive taper. And then for 3 weeks, we're doing maintenance on all of their lifting, maintenance on like all of their gymnastic stuff. And then just ensuring that each week they feel 100% going into every Friday and every Monday. Is our goal. And then I think even leading into the open, something I would do with people, and this was actually something I used to do on myself, because that was how you made regionals when I was training, is a few weeks before my final taper, before the open, is I would actually practice repeating workouts. And I wouldn't always kill myself on the Monday, but I would like do the same workout Friday and Monday. And sometimes like I would stop the workout like a little short because I didn't want to like kill myself, but just learning how to re-warm up and also do the same exact muscle groups and movements when my like legs are trashed from wall balls the Friday before. And I think if you're an open athlete, that's really wise, because learning how to repeat is so essential in the open if you want to make quarterfinals. And then on the other end of that, if you're a quarterfinals athlete, I would just like pretty much eliminate the idea of repeating. If you know you can make quarterfinals, just don't. It doesn't matter if you have a bad run. Just learn from that and go right back into your training for quarterfinals, so that you can prepare yourself for that. And then more importantly, like the open should just be something you're completing on that Friday, whether it's with your gym in the afternoon and Friday night lights, or in the morning, and then structuring your other training around it so that you're training for quarterfinals and those movements, and avoiding open style training during the open.
Yeah. You just threw out like so many good nuggets that I'm going to try to like do it one step at a time here, but like, let's talk about the open athlete. I think what Dom just said is exactly what you should think about it. One, in your training leading up, if you know you're going to have to retest, do that a couple of times. You know, maybe like starting in January, as you go into what we call our performance phase, like that's the sport specific phase where you're doing a lot of true chaos, the CrossFit stuff. Then think about maybe a Friday and a Monday retest. If you're someone that doesn't want to do true retests, you like a little bit more variance. One way I've done this with athletes is I will give them the same patterns on a Friday and a Monday. So maybe it's 2 different open style workouts, but they're very similar. So like deadlift burpee on a Friday and then power snatch burpee on a Monday. So the burpee is still redundant, but then they're getting touches on power snatches and deadlift. So they're getting exposure to multiple movements.
Like wall ball thruster.
Wall ball thruster, exactly. But that's a really good way to practice that. The reason I do like retesting is because I think some people they need to focus more on their pacing, right? And so like there are athletes that maybe, you know, they bomb on a Friday, but it wasn't because they weren't fit enough. It's because they just like went out too hot. And so by practicing it again on a Monday, it can really help you kind of dial in your pacing plan and know your body a little bit more to know how hot you actually can go out. So that would be tip number 1. I think the other one, and Dom, you kind of mentioned this, but I try to set up the entire weekend for success again on a Monday. So if you are an open athlete that knows you're going to have to retest, make sure you're building a program that you're not overtraining on a Saturday or a Sunday going into your retest. Everything you do on Saturday should be preparing your body for your Monday retest, which means probably don't do a lot of hard CrossFit, but spend time doing movement-based work. You know, think about, I was really struggling with my step-ups on my burpees in that workout. So practice those on a Saturday so that you can kind of refine the movement patterns, movement economy. We always talk about that, using less effort per rep so that you're ready to do it well on a Monday. And then the last thing I would say is I really like the strategy, and Dom, you said this again, but just to reiterate, of thinking about how do I set myself up for success on the next week. So Wednesday training sessions, you shouldn't be going so hard where you're sore going into it, because then it's going to be really hard if you know you're on the bubble to get into that top 25%. So having maybe a harder Monday if you're retesting, Tuesday, maybe even doing some other work movements that you know may come out, getting that practice in, but then having a little bit less intense of a session on a Wednesday prepares you better for that Friday.
I used to do, and I still tend to lean this way, but I used to do a little more of like a strength bias session on Wednesdays where we're not really doing as much conditioning. And it's an opportunity too in the open to like really actually continue to like keep your strength up if you make quarterfinals, which is really important for quarterfinals. And it's an easy way to not like completely destroy yourself and like back off the aerobic intensity that you've been doing probably like from the repeats. And then that Saturday session after the Friday, if you're a bubble open athlete, I always loved to use, and still do this, use that Saturday to actually work on the skills and stuff that I'm going to need for quarterfinals without intensity.
Yeah.
So like, that's where you put in the rope climb, in the ring muscle up, and maybe even under a little bit of intensity, and just protect the volume of it so you don't get sore for your Monday repeat. And also like, if the open workout has a bunch of chest to bars or bar muscle ups in it, probably not the best Saturday to do rope climbs and ring muscle ups. But if there's no barbell or not a super heavy barbell in it, could be good on a Saturday to work on like some barbell cycling or some squat maintenance.
Yeah, handstand walks, handstand push-ups, things you know you're not going to use on that Monday for sure. And I 100% agree with that.
I would say that's especially important for like masters athletes to really think about, is it worth it me doing this workout again, and like structuring, you know, the open with how am I going to recover and all that, right? Wouldn't you say? Like,
yeah, for sure. I think that if you're an athlete, you know, you don't have to worry about the open. It may disappoint you that you don't get the placing that you want, but you know, you're easily getting in the top 25%. It's wasted training time to retest the workout, and you'd be better off using that Monday as an opportunity to do all of your quarterfinal prep. And so like kind of flip it around, and Dom, you already talked about a lot of this, but so then for the quarterfinal athlete, the way I like to think about this is Friday is still your open testing day, but then really Saturday through the next Wednesday is all quarterfinal prep. I heavily bias the movements that will come out in quarterfinals to make sure that they're ready, because that is those 3 weeks of the open plus the 1 week kind of bridge before quarterfinals is your final peaking phase for quarterfinals. Mm-hmm. So the open is just a testing workout, you know, that you would normally do in regular training. And then the rest of the time should be focused on those quarterfinal style workouts.
Yeah. One thing I don't know if I should let this secret out, but I'm going to do it.
Do it.
Friday mornings of the open for a quarterfinal athlete, I would do the open workout. And then on a second session for that person, I would actually do like a quarterfinal workout. So you could practice doing 2 workouts in 1 day, because quarterfinals is typically 1 weekend and you're going to have to stack workouts. And I would use that as an opportunity to train like stacking 2 really hard workouts in 1 day, and then do a normal training day on Saturday, like appropriately. But instead of like trying to funnel in like, I don't know, strength maintenance or like actual like interval work, I would actually just use that as like a comp prep day for 3 weeks. And every Friday I would do open workout, quarterfinal workout, so that you can also teach yourself how to eat in between, how to recover in between, and potentially even have like same body parts in the workouts.
Yeah. And this is the opportunity we always talk about, where you have to at some point scrimmage the sport, right? In every other sport, once you get closer to the season, you're doing like full scrimmages, you know, like Connor sitting behind the camera when you're playing basketball, like you guys are going hard, right? Maybe it's not like full game back to back before the season, but you're going hard to be able to feel the chaos of the sport you're playing. Yeah. So you need to do that beforehand. And one of the things I love to do is usually on week 2 of the open, when they have it spaced out the way that they do for quarterfinals, is I'll do a full simulation. So Dom, I'll do, you know, maybe the first week it is back-to-back workouts on a Friday, but then it's more kind of lower volume on a Saturday. But then week 2, we'll do open workout in the morning, quarterfinal style workout in the afternoon. Saturday, you come in, it's another 2 quarterfinal style workouts as a simulation. And this is one, you get to actually feel what it's like doing 4 hard workouts, or maybe even 5, depending on how many they do. But then 2, you get to dial in your nutrition, your recovery, your warm-ups, your cooldowns, all the things that you need to really make sure are dialed if your goal is to do really well in quarterfinals.
Yeah. And it's like perfect timing, like 3-week block and then a week of deload. Yeah. It's like ideal. You literally have a 4-week block to taper and peak for quarterfinals. Use it, and like use the open to your advantage, and that don't use the open to destroy yourself so you suck at quarterfinals.
Yeah, totally. So I think the next phase for the athletes, and this is obviously a much smaller, segment of the CrossFit population, but it would be those that are preparing for quarterfinals because they truly think that they can make a semifinal. And honestly, guys, this year I think is probably going to be, I don't want to say the easiest because it's still extreme. I mean, it's the top 0.1% of the population, but there are more people that are going to get to go to semifinals than ever before. So 2,000 in the regular 34 and under group will get to go to at least an online semifinal. Yep. And then for your age group athletes, it'll be 400 athletes that get to go to either an online or an in-person semifinal, which by the way, I love that they are doing in person for masters. I think I know Super we were talking about that. So that's awesome that they have that opportunity. And then it'll be 300 for masters 55 plus. So it's a little bit less, but I think that's, it's more than what we're used to. And so that means that it gives more opportunity for athletes to actually make it. So let's kind of step into that direction of what do you guys do for those athletes that are maybe a little bit higher level? They're still on the bubble of like, man, I don't know if I can get top 400 and I'm in the 45 to 49 age group, or I'm not sure I'm top 2000, but I was close. Last year I was 2100th place. You know, as a coach, how are you guys talking to those athletes? And then is there anything different that you do for them?
I just think mentally it's important to have them believe that they can make it. You know, that's like how I try to talk to them. Like, we're going to just do everything in our power to set up the season right for you to be able to, you know, show what you've been working at and do your absolute best there.
Yeah. And I think it's important to not let, if you are prioritizing quarterfinals to peak and taper for to make semifinals, you might have a worse open, and coaching people through not performing that well in the open and understanding that, like, once the skills and stuff come in, it's going to literally can flip a leaderboard.
Oh, it always does too, by the way.
Always does. And so I think just like mentally coaching people through that and not letting the open kind of deter all the progress they've made for the stage that they're actually tapering for. And then I would just say, like, that week leading into quarterfinals, especially for masters athletes, and I don't coach a ton of masters athletes. You guys probably would know better, but a healthy masters athlete is the masters athlete that wins, not the broken one. And so, like, ensuring in that 4-week block before quarterfinals that you are just injury free will probably give you your best chance.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that this goes back to, there's no point in retesting open workouts or overdoing it in that time. Like, you should still do a lot of intense work because you have to prep for quarterfinals. But especially if you are an age group athlete, and in the older age groups, you need to make sure you get to quarterfinals healthy. You need to be really smart with your training. You need to prioritize movement, mobility work to make sure you're moving well, so that when you get there, you can actually express your full potential, as opposed to, and I see this every single year, athletes that have these nagging injuries and then they can't do the movements that they want to do. And again, there are higher skill movements and more complex movement patterns that come out in quarterfinals. For the older age groups, overhead squats are usually complicated, or a squat snatch variant that may come out is usually a little bit more challenging. And so you need, one, spend time on that now to make sure that you move well. But two, if you even have little tweaks, it makes those movements so much harder for you. So make sure you're spending the time. And that's true, by the way, for the 22-year-old athlete too. Like, a lot of them overdo it and they get to quarterfinals, they're already beat up. So you have to peak correctly for that competition.
And I think I would add to that, just like with the online semifinal being last this year, the amount of time that you're going to have from quarterfinals to online semifinals, I would say, talking more to the people who aren't going to make an in-person semifinal either. You're just making the online semi. Literally prepare yourself to kill yourself on the quarterfinal weekend, because that's your Super Bowl. Don't stress so much about semifinals, but like, prepare yourself to the point of where, like, after quarterfinals, you should need a week off minimum, like a full week off. And then you would set yourself up to do like a small short block for semifinals. Like, literally set up your whole season to just smash yourself in quarterfinals, repeat workouts 3 times if you have to, in order to make the semifinal, because that would be a really fun experience. And then take rest after, actual rest. Don't just jump into semifinals training if you make it.
Yeah, that is very important. For those that do, you're going to be excited. I think this is the last thing I'll say about the semifinals is actually take a deload, right? Like, have a little mini off season, even if it's a week or 2 weeks, and then you can gear up for it, because there's a longer runway after that. Cool.
Great.
Yeah. When's online semis? Like end of May?
Yeah. So there'll be a good block of training after that. Any other like final tips maybe for those that are kind of, you're looking at the open and it's going to be here before we know it, like anything either, physically or mentally that the athlete should be thinking about?
Yeah, just don't forget yourself on the leaderboard. Like, don't be stressing about the leaderboard too much. That's always, I think, what I see people do.
Yeah, that's good. Don't define yourself by a leaderboard. Yeah. For sure. It's very easy to do. I don't even compete anymore, but I always do the open, and sometimes I don't even sign up because my arm is bum and I don't even know if I can complete all the workouts, but I'll literally get in my head about that still, which is ridiculous. But second thing I think I would say is I am a strategy nerd with CrossFit. I'm love coming up with cool strategies. Learn how to strategize in the open. It's a great place to do it because you can rewatch back video, take splits, and actually have a chance to repeat. And same with quarterfinals. If you really want to learn how to become a good competitive CrossFitter, learn how to actually strategize an event for yourself don't base your strategy off whatever the people doing the open announcement are getting.
Yeah, it's a bad place to be because you're watching games athletes do the workout and then you think you're going to do your burpees and hang snatches and walking lunges as fast as they are.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people do that last year with that first open announcement.
Yeah.
I think, to kind of wrap that up, I would just say, and I'm sure many people have heard me say this before, but the way that I try to communicate with my athletes is there are two things in your control, and that's your effort and your execution. Everything else, the workout selection, the time domain, whatever it may be, what happens that week at work, like you can't control a lot of those things. And so there's no point in dwelling on that. Instead, go into each week and focus on, did I give my best effort? And did I execute to the best of my ability? And if you do those two things, even if the leaderboard doesn't shake out your way, I think you can still be proud about your performance. And that should be something that kind of catapults you into the next season of like, hey, I gave my best effort. I executed really well and it still wasn't enough. What do I need to work on?
Yeah.
And then, dial that in, fix your limiters so that you can be better for the next season.
It's a test for your next season,
Yeah. Awesome,
man.
Thanks guys. See you next week.